All right, let's get into it. We're going to take a look at our world through the eyes of the philosopher Slavoj Žižek, which is always a wild ride. And we're going to start with his book, Trouble in Paradise. But our guide for understanding it all, it is not what you would expect at all.
It all begins with this one question. I know, it sounds a little out there, right? A black and white movie from the 30s? But trust me, according to Žižek, the answer to this question tells us something absolutely crucial about the paradise we all think we're living in, and the trouble that's hiding just under the surface.
So, first up, a film about thieves. Before we get into the heavy stuff, we have to start with the simple story of this classic 1932 film, Trouble in Paradise.
Okay, so the plot seems pretty straightforward. You've got these two incredibly charming and sophisticated criminals, Gaston and Lily. They're partners in crime, and they're in love. But their world gets all tangled up when Gaston gets involved with Mariette, the beautiful, super-rich owner of a perfume company he's supposed to be robbing. It looks like a classic love triangle, right? Well, maybe not.
This brings us to our next section. What is paradise? And folks, this is where it gets really interesting, with what Žižek calls a radical reversal. He takes this simple story and just flips it completely upside down, arguing that we've been watching the movie all wrong.
He asks this really crucial question. So, what is the paradise in this film, and where's the trouble? Is paradise that glamorous, high society life with Mariette that Gaston's tempted by? And is the trouble the fact that he can't quite have her? I mean, that's the obvious way to read it. But Žižek says, hold on a second.
So your standard Hollywood interpretation would say, yeah, paradise is the life of luxury with Mariette, and the trouble is that their love can't work. But Žižek, he just completely reverses this. He says the real paradise is the honest, yeah, criminal, but honest life that Gaston has with Lily. The real trouble, the actual temptation, is the pull of becoming respectable, of joining a high society that, it turns out, is built on a much bigger, more hypocritical kind of theft.
And this quote just nails his point. At one point in the film, Gaston finds out that the chairman of Mariette's company has been quietly siphoning off millions for years. He's furious. Gaston's little heists are literally nothing compared to the massive, systematic, and somehow respectable theft happening at the corporate level. You have the honest criminal versus the hypocritical capitalist.
All right, Section 3, the daring conspiracy. This is where we see how this whole idea of reversal can be used to turn all of our social norms completely on their head. Žižek uses it to make us question everything we think is normal.
He brings in this fantastic kind of mind-bending quote from G.K. Chesterton. The idea here is that civilization, with all its rules, its ethics, its morals, that's the truly radical, rebellious act. Criminals who just follow their basic animal instincts, Chesterton says they're the real conservatives. They're just acting like wolves or apes. The really daring thing to do is to uphold an ethical code.
And then Žižek applies this exact same logic to our lives today, and he asks this super provocative question. In a culture where breaking the rules and transgression is kind of the default, what if choosing a traditional monogamous marriage is actually the most subversive, the most radical act of all? It's a total flip of what we usually think of as rebellious.
Section 4, a blueprint for tomorrow? So how does this critique of a 90-year-old movie apply to the so-called paradise of modern capitalism? Well, Žižek points to a very specific place as a real-world example of this exact same dynamic, a paradise with some deep hidden troubles. He turns his focus to South Korea. And, on the surface, it looks like a total miracle of modern capitalism. You've got incredible economic growth, amazing technology, Samsung, K-pop taking over the entire world. It's a true success story. The perfect capitalist paradise. But, as Žižek says, this is exactly where we find the trouble.
And here are the cracks in that paradise. Despite all that success, all that prosperity, South Korea has the highest suicide rate among developed nations.
And get this, for people under the age of 40, it is the #1 cause of death. So what in the world is going on behind this economic miracle?
Well, the theorist Franco Berardi puts it like this. He says the price for all this success has been the desertification of daily life. Life has become hyper-fast, hyper-competitive, deeply individualistic, and it's creating these unimaginable levels of loneliness and despair. This is the trouble in our modern paradise.
And as a symbol of this whole condition, Žižek points to something we all remember, the global phenomenon that was Psy's Gangnam Style.
He calls the song disgustingly attractive. But why?
Well, the video and the lyrics are all about making fun of the empty, consumer crazy lifestyle of Seoul's Gangnam district. It's ironic. But at the same time, that mechanical, totally meaningless rhythm just pulls you in. You can't help it. You participate even while you're ironically detached from it. And for Žižek, that's modern ideology perfected. Your ironic distance doesn't free you from the system. It's the very thing that lets you keep participating without feeling bad about it.
And that brings us to our final section, the final choice. So after diagnosing the trouble in our capitalist paradise, Žižek leaves us at a crossroads. He basically presents us with two paths forward, a fundamental choice about how we want to live.
And here's the choice, laid out for us. On the one hand, you have cynical conformism. This is the path where you just accept that our current system, with all its flaws, is the only game in town. The idea that fighting for something better is just naive, maybe even dangerous. And on the other hand, you have radical engagement. The belief that the struggle for a more equal, more just world is, to borrow that phrase again, the most daring of all ventures.
So in the end, Žižek doesn't give us the answer. He's not going to. Instead, he puts the question right back on us. Just like Gaston in the movie, we have to choose. Do we accept the glamorous, respectable paradise that's offered to us, even with all of its hidden costs and hypocrisies? Or do we choose the much harder, much more uncertain path of fighting for a different kind of paradise and embrace all the trouble that comes with it?